Hi guys, welcome back. It's me again. So in the last video, we talked about typography, how you present your content. We talked about simplicity, reducing cognitive load by utilizing the visual elements, and we also talked about conventionality. What are the consequences if we go opposed the conventions? Now we'll be continuing on the responsivity in this video. It's going to be a shorter video because it's just responsivity. Alright, so responsive design. What does it actually mean? How do we implement it? Now, in simple terms, responsive design is an approach to web design that makes web pages render well on a variety of devices and screen sizes. Now, why is this important? Well, as mentioned earlier in our first video, for a website, we can view it on a desktop, we can view it on a phone, we can view it on a tablet, and there are different sizes and ratios for all of these displays. Also, if we are using a desktop browser, then you can resize the window as well. So the design that takes this all into consideration is very important to make sure that the user is seeing what we want them to see, to make sure that the users are experiencing what we want them to experience, and so on. Now, how do we implement responsive design into our websites? So most of the layouts we've seen in responsive web pages can be categorized into one of the 5 patterns: mostly fluid, column drop, layout shifter, tiny tweaks, and off canvas. And we are going to briefly explain all of this. Now, the first one, mostly fluid. So this type of responsive layout, if you be on a large enough display, it usually is going to be the same. The layout and the sizes will stay the same, and only the margin on the left and the right hand side will be different. So if you look at the graphic here, the last 2 boxes represents the bigger display, and you can see that it's just the white space that is different. Now, on a smaller screen, so the first 2 boxes, this is when the responsivity really shown, and in fact it's the same for all 5 patterns. It is when the screen is smaller enough that the responsivity is really shown. So back to mostly fluid. Now the name already tells you that the layout is primarily consists of a fluid grid, and on those smaller displays, the fluid grid moves the content. It causes the main content to reflow, and the columns will be stacked vertically to fit the screen. So you can see on the first 2 boxes, the content is reflow. Then the next one is column drop, which also, as the name implies, the layout drops the column. So this is very easy to understand. And this one is for a full width multi-column layouts, like the one shown in the last box. So you don't have any white space, the margin, like the one shown in the previous graphic. So in this pattern, when the window width is too narrow for the content, it drops the last column and stacks it vertically. So you can see in the second last box or the third box from the left, because the screen width is narrower than the full width content, the third column was dropped and stacked under the first 2 columns, and this pattern continues until all columns are stacked. Alright, layout shifter. So this one is the most responsive pattern, but it's very hard to show using just the graphic because it's not about moving or reflowing only the columns or the grids. The layout doesn't actually changes that much. It's your content that moves as the window width gets smaller, gets narrower, and when it gets wider as well. Right, so the key is the content. It is your content that moves around that shows how responsive this pattern is. So the layout is not changing as much. It's the flow of the content, the organization of the content that respond to the screen sizes. The fourth one is tiny tweaks. So this one, if you look at the graphic, there's just 1 column. So the idea of tiny tweaks is to make small changes to the content. So we are adjusting the font size, resizing the images, or moving content around in a very minor ways. Now this pattern works well on a single column layout as the graphic shown. So there's no changes in the grid layout, but the changes are on the content itself, resizing it to make it fit the smaller window. Now the last one is off canvas. Also, as the name implies and as the graphic show, the changes on what is shown on the screen when it gets narrower. Alright, so when the display is very small, the first example, it shows only the most important or the more important column on the screen, and that is usually the content. And the less frequently used content or columns, maybe the navigation bar, maybe other miscellaneous things, will be off screen, and it will only be shown when the display size is large enough. So if you look at the graphic here, the first one is the narrow screen, so it just shows the most important column, and when the screen gets wider, it started to show the second column and the third column. When the screen gets wider than what it needed, then we'll have the margin on the left and right side. So that's all from me in this video. There's an article from the Google developer site discussing on the do's and don'ts of designing a mobile site, and I'll post the links in the description. So do check it out. I think it's a very interesting topic to look at, and I'll see you guys later in the next video.